One of my friends who's a pastor asked the question this week, is there anything that would be worth dropping what you're doing right now and leaving for? Just whatever you're doing right now, just dropping it and walking out the door. It would take a lot. I remember, this happened to me one time. I was in 2004, October 2004. I was working for Chrysler. I was living in Burlington, Vermont. And I was working from home that day, and I got a call from my boss around lunchtime and said, we got tickets to the Red Sox-Yankees ALDS game tonight. You going to come? I'm like, yep. So I dropped what I was doing, got in my car, drove 4.5 hours to Boston, got to my friend's apartment. We got on the train, took it to Fenway Park, got there just in time for it to be rained out. Yep, got right back in the car and drove back to Burlington, Vermont. But 2 days later, I got to come back and watch them beat the Yankees, and then, as you know, they went on to win the World Series, so that was fun. But is there really anything that could happen right now? Someone could call you with an offer to make you drop what you're doing and leave and go. I was thinking hard about this week. I can't think of really a whole lot of things. Maybe a chance to go golfing at like Vaquero or Colonial, but not Bear Creek. I don't know. I'm just thinking. I don't know if there's anything that would make me get up in the middle of the day and say I'm just leaving everything and going to do something. But that's what the disciples did. As Jason said, they just dropped their nets and they left. They were with their father Zebedee. Zebedee was like, he was probably relying on them to work at least the whole day, if not the week, if not the rest of their lives. And they just said, sorry, Dad, see you later. We're gone. You can imagine Zebedee watching his sons walk away and not being a very happy camper. But they left. Last week we heard the story of Jesus calling his first disciples according to John. This week we get it differently because it tells us what Jesus calls his disciples to do. He calls them to go and fish for people. To fish for people. Which isn't very exciting to hear, that I'm going to go and catch people because, I don't know, people don't like to be caught, just like fish don't really like to be caught. So how do you fish for people? I remember growing up, my grandparents lived on a canal that led right to the Detroit River. And so we'd go there in the summertime, and I'd spend weeks on end there and get up in the morning, and my grandfather had 6 or 7 docks in his backyard for just small boats, and people would dock their boat there, and he had his boat there. And every day we'd go fishing. And I loved to go fishing with my grandpa. So we'd get up and we'd grab a quick breakfast, we'd go out into the Detroit River and we'd fish all day. And we'd go to Strawberry Island and we'd swim and we'd have a picnic. And it was just something that a grandfather and a grandson did together that was just magical. Well, one day Grandma came along. And we were going to show Grandma. We were going to catch a bunch of fish and show her what we do together. And so we went and we fished. And she goes, well, I'll put a line in the water. She wasn't really there to fish. She was just there to be there. And so my grandpa and I are just, casting and reeling and casting and reeling. And we're changing baits because we're not catching anything. We're going from worms to lures, all these other things, changing it up, going different places. And we didn't catch anything. And here Grandma is with her line in the water, not paying any attention to it, reading a book. And we'd been out there for a long time, and we said, well, we might as well go in. And Grandma goes, okay, well, then I guess I'll reel this in. And I go, what if there's a fish on there? Wouldn't it be funny? She goes, there's no way. Well, sure enough, she reeled it in, and she caught the only fish that day. The thing that I learned that day was that if you're going to fish, you need patience. You need a lot of patience. And if we're going to be disciples, to fish for people, the one thing we need is patience. Because you don't start out asking people if they have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. I love to do that, by the way, when I meet somebody for the first time. If they say, oh, this is my pastor, well, I won't do this to your friends, but, like when I go home, because people automatically get this look on their face like, uh-oh. So you just start with relationships. You start as friends. And you build on that relationship. And people know by your actions and by some things you say that you might be a Christian, that you might go to church. And maybe after a couple of years, they'll ask you about it. Or there'll be an opportunity to talk about it. We fish patiently. Because that's the only way you catch fish. And that's the only way you build relationships with people. But why do you do that? Why do we do this? I love this text in the Psalm where it says, one thing I ask of the Lord, one thing I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. It's beautiful, the beautiful image of dwelling in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. And that's powerful for me, but I don't know if that's powerful to somebody who doesn't believe in God or doesn't go to church. It's just one of those things. I think what's more powerful is in Isaiah. But there will be no gloom for those who were in anguish. I don't know about you, but I know a lot of people in anguish. 2 years ago, my shoulder was hurting really bad. So for Christmas, Michelle got me a gift card to go get a massage on my shoulder. And so I went, and it really helped. So I started going back like once a month I go. And so I go to Massage Envy here in Southlake. And everyone there knows me now as the pastor. I've given out my books to a bunch of people and talked with a few people. And this one girl came up to me this past week and said, "You're the pastor, right?" I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Can you pray for me and my family?" And I said, "Well, sure. What's going on?" And we sat there and had this long conversation about how her husband has moved to a different state and she's supposed to follow in a few months, and just how hard it is to be apart when you're family, and just go, I just shared this. And she goes, "I can't believe I'm telling you these things, but I just really need someone to pray with me and to pray for me." There's a lot of people that we come in contact with every day that are in anguish, that are hurting, that need people to tell them the good news, that need people to shine a light in the darkness, that need people to say the words, "There will be no gloom for those who are in anguish." The world needs people to say good news. And we, as the people of God, need to hear good news as well, whether it's coming from the lips of a friend or our own. Every time we tell the story of Jesus, every time, I love how Paul says that the message of the cross is foolishness for others, but for us, it is the power of God. Every time we tell the message of the cross, we share the power of God. It's got the power to transform others as well as ourselves again and again and again. And so the story of the cross, the story of Jesus, never gets old. It could never be told too much, because every day, every one of us needs to hear the story of the power of God. It may be the one thing that is worth dropping everything else to hear and to tell. Amen.